There's a lie you've been told about forgiveness your entire life. And this lie, this single devastating lie, is the reason you're still carrying a weight that's crushing you. The reason you wake up every morning with that familiar ache in your chest. The reason you can't seem to move forward no matter how hard you try. You've been told that forgiveness is weakness. That if you forgive the person who hurt you, you're letting them off the hook. You're saying what they did was okay. You're being a doormat. You're weak, pathetic, unable to stand up for yourself. But what if I told you the exact opposite is true? What if holding on to that resentment, that bitterness you think is protecting you, that anger you think is keeping you strong, is actually the thing destroying you from the inside out? What if forgiveness isn't about them at all? What if it's the most powerful thing you could do for yourself? I'm about to share with you a story about a 72-year-old woman named Sofia who discovered something that changed everything. After being betrayed by her best friend of 65 years and her own son, she spent 4 months dying slowly in an emotional desert, until she found the healing waters. And what she discovered will challenge everything you think you know about forgiveness, strength, and what it really takes to be free. So if you're carrying resentment right now, if you've been hurt by someone you trusted, if you're stuck in a desert of bitterness, wondering if you'll ever feel alive again, this message is for you, because the healing waters are real. They're inside you right now. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly how to turn them on. Let's begin. In today's episode, the healing waters.
Subscribe now. Activate notifications.
While we reflect on this, write in the comments which city and country you are following, listening to this daily message of light from. We would love to know how far our message is reaching. Have you ever felt like you're carrying something so heavy inside your chest that you can barely breathe? Like there's a weight pressing down on your heart, making it hard to enjoy even the smallest moments of life? You wake up in the morning, and before your feet even touch the floor, that familiar ache is already there. It sits with you at breakfast. It follows you throughout the day. And at night, when you finally lay your head on the pillow, it's still there, heavy, stubborn, unwilling to let go. You know what it's like to be trapped in a moment that happened long ago, but somehow still feels like it happened yesterday. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine you're standing in the middle of a vast desert. The sun beats down relentlessly, scorching your skin with an intensity that feels almost violent. There's no shade anywhere, no relief, no escape from the oppressive heat. Just mile after mile of sand, stretching out in every direction, as far as your eyes can see. The landscape is monotonous, unchanging, suffocating in its sameness. Your throat is so parched that swallowing has become painful. Your tongue feels like sandpaper against the roof of your mouth. And every step you take feels heavier than the last, as if the sand itself is trying to pull you down, to swallow you whole. You look around desperately, hoping to see something, anything that might offer comfort. A tree, a rock for shade, a hint of water on the horizon. But all you see is more sand, more heat, more emptiness, more desolation that seems to go on forever, where hope withers and dies before it ever has a chance to bloom, choked out by the harsh conditions. It's like setting yourself on fire and expecting someone else to feel the heat, to feel the burning, to understand the agony you're going through. They might be enjoying their morning coffee, laughing with friends, sleeping peacefully at night without any nightmares or guilt haunting their dreams. You're the one who's stuck in the desert, wondering why the landscape never changes, why the sun never stops beating down, why nothing ever gets better, no matter how hard you try. And instead of finding a way to heal, instead of discovering the path that leads out of the desert, they hold on to the hurt like it's a precious treasure they can't afford to lose. They nurse their wounds with meticulous care, keeping them fresh and raw. They feed their anger with memories and imagined conversations. They let the resentment become part of their identity, woven into the very fabric of who they are. They wear it like armor, thinking it's protecting them from future hurt. But in reality, it's suffocating them, cutting off their air supply, making it impossible to breathe freely. At least, that's what you noticed first when you looked at old photographs of her. But when she started talking to me, when she began to share her story, I could hear the pain underneath every word. It was there in her voice, quiet, but unmistakable. Like a low hum you can't quite place, but can't ignore either. Not even an acknowledgement that the debt existed. Sarah had loaned her the money during what was perhaps the most difficult time in Margaret's life. Their father had just passed away after a long, painful battle with cancer, and Margaret was struggling to keep her house, to keep her family together, to keep from falling apart completely. Sarah, being the older sister and always the responsible one, the one everyone turned to in times of crisis, stepped in to help without a moment's hesitation. She didn't think twice about it. Family helps family, right? That's what she'd been taught growing up. She acted as if it had never happened, as if those thousands of dollars had simply vanished into thin air. And when Sarah finally worked up the courage to ask about it, after years of hoping Margaret would do the right thing on her own, Margaret got defensive. Her face flushed red with anger. Her voice became sharp and cutting. She said Sarah was being petty, small-minded, obsessed with money. That family shouldn't keep score like accountants. That Sarah had plenty of money anyway, so why did it even matter? And now she acts like I'm the bad guy for even mentioning it, like I'm the one who's done something wrong. It cast a shadow over every conversation, every shared memory, every moment that should have brought the family together. And the saddest part? The part that broke my heart when Sarah told me? Margaret probably didn't even think about it anymore. The loan, the promise, the betrayal, it had all faded from her memory like morning mist. But Sarah? She thought about it every single day, multiple times a day. It was the first thing on her mind when she woke up, and the last thing she thought about before falling into a restless, troubled sleep. And while you're standing there in the middle of that desert, the rest of the world keeps moving forward. Life continues. Seasons change. People grow and evolve. But you're frozen in place, unable to move, unable to progress, unable to find your way out. It clouds your judgment, making it hard to think clearly or make good decisions. It makes you suspicious of everyone's motives, even people who've never given you any reason to doubt them. It turns you cynical and hard, like a piece of soft clay that's been left in the sun too long and has turned into brittle stone. It robs you of your joy, your peace, and your ability to connect authentically with the people who actually care about you, the people who want to be there for you. You start building walls to protect yourself, higher and higher, thicker and thicker, until you're completely surrounded. But those walls that were supposed to keep you safe end up trapping you inside, cutting you off from the very connections that could help you heal. Not the person who betrayed you, or lied to you, or broke your heart. You're the one paying the price every single day. Things that used to bring you joy suddenly feel empty and meaningless. People who used to make you laugh suddenly seem annoying or fake. Experiences that once filled you with wonder now leave you feeling nothing at all. And the worst part? You don't even realize it's happening. The change is so gradual, so subtle, that you think this is just how the world is now. You forget what it was like to see clearly, to feel deeply, to experience life without that dark filter distorting everything. But his eyes carried a sadness it was impossible to miss, a heaviness that seemed to pull down his entire face. Michael thought George was being unfair in how he divided things, that he was playing favorites with the other children. George thought Michael was being greedy, ungrateful, focused on material possessions instead of honoring his mother's memory. Words were said in the heat of the moment. Harsh, cutting words that can never be taken back. Lines were drawn in the sand. Positions became entrenched, and before either of them fully understood what was happening, they weren't talking anymore. Not after how he treated me during the worst time of my life, right after losing my wife, that I was impossible to talk to, impossible to reason with. He had no right to say those things to me, especially not when I was grieving, especially not when I was trying my best to honor his mother's wishes. He was the one suffering. He was the one lying awake at night, replaying the argument in excruciating detail. He was the one imagining what his son was doing, wondering if Michael ever thought about him, if Michael missed him too. He was the one carrying the weight of that broken relationship every single day, feeling it pressed down on his chest like a physical burden. It tricks you into thinking you're holding the other person accountable, that you're maintaining your dignity and self-respect. But really, you're just holding yourself hostage. You're the prisoner in a jail cell where you're also the jailer, and you're the only one with the key to freedom. You stop opening up about your true feelings because vulnerability feels too dangerous. You stop taking risks in relationships because the pain of potential betrayal feels unbearable. Because the pain of betrayal, the sting of disappointment, the ache of being let down, it's just too much to bear again. You can't go through that again. You won't survive it a second time. So you protect yourself. You put up walls. You keep people at arm's length. You maintain a safe distance from everyone. And you tell yourself it's for the best, that you're being smart, that you're learning from past mistakes. You lose intimacy, the kind that comes from being truly known and truly loved. You lose the chance to be seen for who you really are, flaws and all, and still be accepted. You lose the opportunity to experience the fullness of life, the laughter that makes your stomach hurt, the warmth of genuine friendship, the shared moments of joy and sorrow that make everything worthwhile, that give life its richness and depth. 15 years of missed memories. 15 years of holidays spent in awkward silence, of dinners where conversation felt forced and stilted. 15 years of birthdays and anniversaries and milestones that could have been celebrated together, that could have been shared with love and laughter. All because of a loan that, in the grand scheme of a lifetime, in the context of a relationship that had spanned decades, didn't really matter. Not compared to what was lost. 10 years of missed opportunities to say, I love you, or I'm proud of you, or I'm sorry. All because of an argument that, looking back with the clarity that distance provides, was probably rooted more in grief and pain and confusion than in any real disagreement about material possessions. It steals joy that was yours for the taking. And the longer you stay there, the more you lose. And the harder it becomes to even remember what you're missing, what life was like before you entered that barren place. You don't have to let resentment define your days and haunt your nights. There is a way out. There is a path that leads from the desert to green pastures, from drought to abundant water. There is a source of healing that's been available to you all along, patiently waiting for you to discover it. It's just that most people, in their pain and anger, are looking for it in all the wrong places. They think it comes from getting an apology that sounds just right, with exactly the right words and the right tone of remorse. From seeing the other person suffer the way they've suffered, experiencing the same pain and loss. From finally hearing the words they've been waiting for. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I see now how much I hurt you. Please forgive me. They can bring a sense of closure, a feeling of being validated and understood. They can bring relief, like a cool breeze in the desert. But what if the apology never comes? What if the person never admits they were wrong, never sees their actions the way you see them? What if they don't even remember what they did? Or they remember it completely differently? What if they've rewritten the story in their own mind so that they're the victim and you're the villain? Because the real source of healing, the deep and lasting kind that actually transforms you from the inside out, doesn't come from out there in the external world. It comes from within. It comes from a place inside you that you may not even know exists yet, a wellspring of strength and grace that's been there all along. A place that's stronger, wiser, and more resilient than you ever imagined possible. You can keep searching for water in the desert, chasing mirages that shimmer with false promise, hoping that someday the external circumstances will align perfectly and you'll finally feel better. You can keep waiting for the apology, the justice, the understanding, the acknowledgement. You can keep giving your power away to people who may never change. You can start digging for the well that's been there all along, hidden beneath layers of hurt and anger and resentment, but still there, still full, still ready to provide the living water your soul desperately needs. I'm just not capable of this kind of forgiveness. It's a conscious decision, made and remade every day, sometimes every hour, to stop allowing the past to dictate your future like a tyrannical ruler. It's a choice to reclaim your power, your peace, and your freedom from people and circumstances that have held them hostage for far too long. You don't need anyone's apology to move forward. You don't need the perfect circumstances or the right timing or everything to be resolved externally. You just need to be willing to look inward and discover the source that's been there all along, waiting patiently for you to access it. Someone threw it at you. You didn't ask for it. You didn't deserve it. You didn't do anything to provoke it. It wasn't your fault. It hurt when it hit you, burning your palm on impact. And now it's still there, still burning, still causing pain with every passing second. You can feel the searing heat. You can smell your own skin starting to singe, that acrid smell of flesh burning. The pain is constant, relentless, unbearable. And it hurts. It really, really hurts. But in the meantime, while you're waiting for all of that to happen, you're the one getting burned. You're the one suffering every second of every day. You're the one losing part of yourself with every moment that passes, with every bit of flesh that's consumed by the fire. The pain begins to ease. The healing can finally begin. Your hand can start to recover, to regenerate, to become whole again. It's about choosing freedom over bondage. It's about choosing to stop punishing yourself for someone else's mistakes, someone else's cruelty, someone else's failure to love you the way you deserved to be loved. It's a decision you make to reclaim your power, your peace, and your ability to live fully and freely again. They dominate your thoughts, even when you try to think about something else. They control your emotions, pulling your strings like a puppet master. And you can't be free. You can't truly live your own life as long as that connection exists. You take back the power they've been holding over you, often without even knowing it. And you step out of the desert and into a new landscape, a place where healing is possible, where joy can grow again, where peace can flourish like flowers after rain. Are you ready to discover what's waiting for you on the other side of forgiveness? Are you ready to find out who you could be without this weight, without this burden, without this prison? Not when circumstances are perfect. Right now, today, this very moment. Once you realize you've been living in that emotional desert, once you truly recognize the weight you've been carrying and how much it's been costing you, draining you of life and vitality, the next question naturally arises, urgent and demanding. Okay, so how do I get out? Where do I find water in this wasteland? Where is the oasis I've heard about, but never seen? Because in their desperation, in their pain, in their understandable desire for relief, they start looking for healing in all the wrong places, chasing mirages that promise satisfaction but deliver only deeper thirst. Maybe justice would be served, so they plot in the darkness of night. They scheme, imagining elaborate scenarios. They fantasize about all the ways they could hurt the person who hurt them, all the ways they could make them understand, make them suffer, make them pay. And for a moment, just a brief, fleeting, intoxicating moment, it feels good. It feels like power surging through their veins. Like control when everything else feels out of control. Like justice when the world seems fundamentally unfair. They think, if other people would just understand what happened to me, if they could just see how wrong that person was, if they could just witness the injustice and acknowledge it, then maybe I'd feel vindicated. Maybe I'd feel seen and heard. Maybe the pain would matter to someone other than me. So they tell the story over and over and over again, compulsively, obsessively, to friends who've heard it a dozen times already, to family members who don't know what else to say, to acquaintances who didn't ask but are too polite to walk away, to anyone who will listen, even strangers on the internet who have no connection to the situation. They rehearse the betrayal, the disappointment, the hurt, keeping it alive in their consciousness like tending a fire that should have been allowed to go out. And yes, sometimes people respond with sympathy. Sometimes they say, "That's terrible. I can't believe they did that to you. You didn't deserve that." And for a moment, there's a flicker of comfort in being understood and having your pain validated. The sympathy doesn't change what happened. The acknowledgement doesn't give you back what was taken. And still, the desert remains hot and dry and unforgiving. I'll be in control, so they build those walls brick by brick, stone by stone. They isolate themselves physically and emotionally. They become hard, guarded, suspicious of everyone's motives. They scrutinize every interaction for signs of potential betrayal. They keep everyone at a distance, maintaining careful control over how much of themselves they reveal. They might successfully prevent anyone from getting close enough to wound them the way they've been wounded before. But they also avoid future joy, future connection, future love, future beauty, future everything that makes life worth living. They lock themselves in a prison of their own making, thinking they're safe when really they're just alone. And the desert doesn't shrink, it grows larger, encompassing more and more of their world until there's nothing left but sand and heat and isolation. It has to spring up from a source inside you that you may not even know exists yet. How does it actually help me? This is the difference between people who stay stuck for decades and people who find freedom. We want them to suffer consequences, to face justice, to experience some version of the pain they inflicted on us. And if we can't have any of that, we at least want them to suffer the way we've suffered, to lie awake at night consumed by guilt, the way we lie awake consumed by pain. The hurt is too deep, the damage is too extensive, the wrong is too great. Surely healing must come from outside, from the person who caused the wound, from circumstances changing, from time passing, from something external. You can't make them see the error of their ways or understand the full impact of their actions. You can't guarantee they'll ever face consequences for what they did. In fact, life is often frustratingly unfair in this regard. And you certainly can't go back in time and prevent the hurt from happening in the first place, no matter how many times you replay the scenario in your mind, imagining different choices and different outcomes. You're healing. Thomas was in his mid-70s when I met him, with weathered hands that told stories of a lifetime of work. He'd spent most of his life as a mechanic, fixing cars, solving problems, making things work again that had broken down. He had a practical mind, the kind that liked things that made sense, things that followed logical rules. He liked things he could see with his eyes, touch with his hands, measure with instruments. If something was broken, there was a process to fix it. If something wasn't working, there was a reason why. Everything had a cause and an effect. He filed police reports with detailed documentation. He hired private investigators to chase down leads. He spent thousands of dollars and countless hours trying to get his money back, trying to bring the man to justice, trying to make things right the way a mechanic makes a broken engine right. The partner was never found, disappearing as completely as if he'd vanished into thin air. The money was never recovered, gone forever. The case eventually went cold, filed away with all the other unsolved crimes. And Thomas was left with even less than he started with, not just financially, because the legal fees and investigation costs had added up, but emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. I tried to make it right the way you're supposed to. Why do I still feel this way? Why hasn't anything changed? Like something vital has been ripped out of me, and I can't figure out how to fill the space it left behind. For something, anything, that would help me understand why he did this to me after 30 years of partnership, 30 years of friendship, 30 years of trust. It's like I'm running on a treadmill, expending all this energy, but not getting anywhere at all. What if it's in here? And I placed my hand over my heart. What if the source of healing isn't in getting your money back, or seeing that man punished, or receiving an explanation that satisfies your need to understand? What if it's in something deeper, something that's been inside you all along, something that doesn't depend on external circumstances changing? It sounds too simple, too internal, too divorced from the practical realities of what happened and what needs to happen to make it right. He started exploring forgiveness, not as something he needed to receive from his former partner, but as something he could give to the partner, yes, but more importantly to himself. Not why won't justice be served, but what can I learn from this pain? Not how can I make him pay, but how can I grow through this experience? Not when will he fix this, but what do I need to do to heal? The weight began to lift, not all at once, but gradually, like fog burning off in morning sunlight. The desert began to bloom, one small flower at a time, as he learned to water his own soul with forgiveness and self-compassion. I don't wake up angry. I don't go to bed bitter. I've found something inside me that's stronger than the hurt, deeper than the betrayal, more powerful than the injustice. That's the well that never runs dry. That source is always there, always available, always ready to quench your thirst and restore your soul. Keep digging until you hit water. Questions like, because they shift the focus from what was done to you, which you can't change, to what you're going to do with it, which you absolutely can change. They shift the power from the person who hurt you back to you, where it belongs. They move you from a position of helpless victimhood to active agent in your own healing. But in reclaiming your own power and choosing a different path forward, a path that leads through the desert to green pastures on the other side. The people who heal the fastest, the people who experience the deepest transformation, the people who move from victims to victors, they aren't the ones who receive perfect apologies or see perfect justice served or get everything they feel they're owed. They're the ones who stop waiting for external validation and start drawing from their internal well. I don't need you to suffer for me to find peace. I don't need you to understand the depth of my pain for me to heal from it. I'm choosing to heal with or without your cooperation, with or without your acknowledgement, with or without anything from you at all. That's taking responsibility for your own healing instead of outsourcing it to people who may never provide what you need. Your hurt is valid, your anger is understandable, and it all deserves to be acknowledged, felt, processed. Honoring your hurt doesn't mean you have to carry it like a backpack full of stones until it breaks your back. That's part of healing. It provides a way to acknowledge what was done to you while refusing to let it be the final word on who you become. They just need to discover the well and learn to draw from it daily. People will disappoint you. They'll hurt you. They'll let you down. That's just part of being human, part of living in a broken world full of broken people. But when you know where the healing water is, when you know how to access that internal source, you don't have to stay stuck in the desert every time you're hurt. You can find your way back to peace, back to joy, back to yourself more quickly each time because you know the path. Are you ready to stop searching for water in the desert? Are you ready to stop chasing mirages that will never satisfy? Are you ready to discover the well that's been inside you all along, just waiting for you to dig deep enough to find it? It's a source of living water that can transform your desert into a garden, your death into life, your prison into freedom. Other days you'll feel like you're back at square one, searching desperately, with trusting that the healing you seek is not somewhere out there in circumstances you can't control, but somewhere in here, in the depths of your own soul, where God has planted springs of living water. A story about a woman who discovered these healing waters in the most unexpected way, in the darkest moment of her journey. A devastating situation, isn't it? Let me tell you about Sofia. Like a building being demolished in careful stages, so gradually that you don't notice the destruction, until one day you look around and realize there's nothing left standing. Just ruins. Just empty space where something solid and beautiful used to be. This was a place where neighbors still borrowed sugar and returned it with a homemade pie as thanks. Where the local diner knew your order before you sat down. Where generations of families grew up side by side, watching each other's children grow, attending each other's weddings and funerals, celebrating victories and mourning losses together. She'd attended the elementary school that now served her grandchildren. She'd gotten married in the little white church on the hill. She'd raised her children there, in the same house her parents had lived in. She'd buried her husband there, in the cemetery next to that white church, under an oak tree. The park where her children had learned to ride bikes. The beach where she'd scattered her mother's ashes. The library where she'd volunteered for 40 years. That's more than most people live. That was the beginning of everything. They'd been there for each other, through first loves and last goodbyes, through the awkwardness of adolescence and the challenges of young adulthood. They'd celebrated birthdays together, milestone after milestone, sweet 16, 21, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. They'd mourned together when Carmen's mother died of breast cancer, when Sofia's father had a stroke that left him unable to speak. They were sisters in every way that mattered, bound not by blood but by choice, by decades of choosing each other day after day, year after year. They were witnesses to each other's lives, the keepers of each other's stories. Carmen knew things about Sofia that no one else knew, fears she'd never spoken aloud to anyone else, dreams she'd never dared to pursue, regrets that haunted her in quiet moments. And Sofia knew Carmen the same way, knew her inside and out, could predict her reactions and finish her sentences. Carmen was the one who helped her sort through Robert's belongings, deciding what to keep and what to donate. Carmen was the one who sat with her through the long, empty nights when the house felt too quiet and the bed felt too big and the future felt too uncertain. She cried with her, laughed with her when memories turned from painful to sweet, and reminded her on the darkest days that life was still worth living, even when it felt like the light had gone out forever. They'd been through everything together. They were constants in each other's lives, the one thing you could count on when everything else was uncertain. Not all at once, but gradually, like she was slowly pulling away, creating space where there had never been space before. 3 times felt like a pattern. Hours would pass before Carmen called back, and when she did, the conversation felt rushed, distracted, like Carmen's mind was somewhere else. She'd check her phone repeatedly. She'd end conversations quickly, always having somewhere else she needed to be. She'd known Carmen long enough to distinguish between her real smiles and her fake ones. This was definitely fake. "I'm just busy, that's all. You know how it is. Life gets hectic sometimes." What could possibly be making her so busy that she couldn't maintain their friendship the way she always had? There's a change in the air pressure, a certain quality to the light, an instinct in your bones that says something's about to happen. She couldn't articulate it, this vague sense of unease. "I don't know if I should tell you this." She paused, wrestling with herself. "But, well, I think you should know. I'd want to know if I were you. It's about Carmen. She's been spending a lot of time with David. She's always been close to him. Everything suddenly felt wrong. The angles, the lights, the sounds that seemed both too loud and too far away." "What?" The word came out as barely a whisper. Those words echoed in Sofia's mind, bouncing around like a pinball, hitting every sensitive surface. Everyone knew. The whole town knew. People had been seeing them together, whispering about it, speculating about it, probably pitying her for being the only one who didn't know. For weeks. How many weeks? How long had this been going on while she remained blissfully, pathetically ignorant? The words didn't make sense, even as she heard them, even as she tried to force her brain to process what Margaret was telling her. It was all a blur, lost in the shock of what she just learned. There was a 26-year age gap between them. Carmen was old enough to be David's mother. She was Sofia's age. For God's sake, this didn't make sense. This couldn't be real. That wasn't what made her feel like she was drowning, like the air had been sucked out of the room, and she couldn't fill her lungs no matter how hard she tried. Letting the whole town gossip about it, letting everyone know except her, making her the fool, the last to know, the object of pity. How many conversations had they had, the two of them, about how to handle this, about whether to tell her, about how she might react? Her hands were still trembling as she dialed his number, her whole body shaking with adrenaline and hurt and disbelief. It's kind of late for you to be calling. The cheerfulness was gone. He knew what she was asking. She knew before he even said the words. Like something that could never be put back together, quite right even if he tried. 180 days of conversations with Carmen where her best friend had looked her in the eye and never mentioned that she was in a relationship with Sofia's son. 180 days of family dinners with David where he'd acted completely normal, never giving any indication that his life had changed in such a fundamental way. How could you both do this to me? A woman old enough to be your mother? A woman I've trusted for 65 years? And you thought the best way to handle it was to hide it from me for 6 months? To let me find out from a neighbor at the grocery store? To let the entire town know before I did? We didn't want to hurt you, but this isn't about you, Mom. This is about me and Carmen. This is our life, our relationship, our decision to make. He didn't see the violation of trust. He didn't understand that by keeping this secret, by hiding this relationship, they had fundamentally damaged something that could never be fully repaired. Sofia didn't leave her house, except when absolutely necessary. She didn't answer the phone when it rang, and it rang constantly. Carmen called multiple times a day, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. David called too, his messages shifting from defensive to apologetic to frustrated. She didn't go to her book club meeting, even though she'd never missed one in 15 years. She didn't go to the community center where she volunteered every Thursday, serving lunch to seniors who had become like family to her over the years. Of hearing the whispers, seeing the glances, feeling their judgment or their sympathy, she wasn't sure which would be worse. She even showed up at Sofia's door multiple times, ringing the doorbell persistently, knocking until her knuckles must have hurt, calling through the door. Please. She didn't know if she'd forgive or attack, or simply crumble into a million pieces that could never be put back together. Not a physical weight that you can measure on a scale or hold in your hands, but an emotional one that sits on your chest like a stone or no, not a stone, something heavier, like concrete that's still wet and setting, becoming harder and heavier with each passing hour. A weight that makes it hard to breathe, hard to sleep, hard to think about anything else. It's everything that comes after, the aftermath that seems to go on forever. Waves of pain that keep coming, even when you think surely you must have felt everything there is to feel. Looking back through your memories like old photographs, examining each one for signs you missed, clues you should have seen. Were they making plans right there at Sofia's table while she served pot roast and asked David about his week? Every moment of the past 6 months, maybe longer, who knows how long they'd had feelings for each other before they acted on them, had to be re-examined through this new lens. And it was exhausting, Soul-crushing, maddening. Did I miss signs that were obvious to everyone else? She lost 15 pounds in a month, her clothes hanging loose on her frame. She stopped sleeping properly. Every night was a battle, lying in bed for hours, mind racing, then finally falling into a fitful sleep filled with nightmares, and waking up feeling more exhausted than when she went to bed. The tomato plants she'd been so carefully nurturing died from lack of water. The roses she'd pruned so precisely became overgrown and wild. The books sat on her knitstand, bookmarks losing their place, stories left unfinished because she couldn't concentrate long enough to follow a plot. It was as if the betrayal had drained all the color out of the world, leaving everything gray and flat and lifeless. He was worried she could see it in his face, in the way he studied her, like she might break if he looked away. "I'm the victim here, Michael. I'm the one who was lied to, betrayed, humiliated. But you're hurting yourself more now. Don't let their betrayal be the thing that destroys you." About how the two people she'd trusted with her whole heart had chosen each other over her. Sofia, the woman who'd been made a fool of in front of her entire town. Sofia, the woman whose life had been stolen by people she'd trusted. Sofia, the victim of a cruel cosmic joke. It was the only thing that made sense in a world that had stopped making sense the day she found out about Carmen and David. Her hair, once carefully styled every morning, grew wild and unkempt. Her house, once meticulously clean, fell into disarray. Dishes piled up. Laundry sat unwashed. Dust gathered on surfaces. The fountain in the center of the garden filled with dead leaves and stagnant water. She caught glimpses of herself in mirrors and didn't know the woman staring back hollow-eyed, gaunt, aged beyond her years, wearing the expression of someone who'd given up on life. She couldn't even remember why she was still carrying it anymore. The initial betrayal, the specific actions of Carmen and David, they'd become almost abstract. What remained was just the weight itself, the habit of carrying it, the identity of being the person who was carrying it. She was no longer resentful because of what they did, but simply because being resentful was who she was now. A stubborn spark that won't quite go out no matter how hard the wind blows. And that voice, that small persistent voice that sounded somehow both like her own and like something beyond herself, whispered a question she'd been avoiding for months. Out loud, into the darkness of her bedroom, she whispered back, no, didn't know how to put down the weight, or tear down the walls, or step out of the prison. The Sofia who remembered what joy felt like and wanted to feel it again. The thing about isolation is that it starts as protection and ends as prison. Giving herself space to process what had happened without the pressure of other people's opinions and expectations and need for her to be okay when she was decidedly not okay. Maybe she did need some space to feel her feelings without having to perform normalcy for other people's comfort. The isolation that felt like sanctuary becomes solitary confinement. The protection becomes prison. The perspective you thought you'd gain from distance is actually distorting, warping, becoming increasingly disconnected from reality. And when we cut ourselves off from that, when we try to do this hard, essential work of healing completely on our own, we make it infinitely harder than it needs to be. The lack of oxygen prevents the kind of healing that comes from exposure, from circulation, from the natural processes that require openness rather than complete sealing. They need the reality checks that come from people who love you enough to tell you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Every week, without fail, he'd call. He'd leave voicemails, short ones at first, then increasingly worried, then almost pleading. "Mom, please pick up. I just want to know you're okay. I just want to hear your voice. You don't have to talk about David or Carmen. We can talk about anything or nothing. Just please let me know you're still there." He'd leave them on her porch, ringing the doorbell, waiting to see if she'd open the door. Usually, she wouldn't. She'd watch from behind the curtain as he stood there for a moment, His shoulders slumped with worry and defeat before finally walking back to his car. And she'd feel a strange mixture of gratitude that someone still cared and resentment that he was trying to push past the walls she'd built so carefully. She'd put them away mechanically, barely noticing what he'd brought. And she'd feel the weight of guilt added to the weight of betrayal guilt that she was hurting Michael, the innocent party in all this, the son who'd done nothing wrong but was being punished alongside the one who had. Paralyzing, overwhelming fear that if she opened the door even a crack, if she let Michael in even a little bit, she might fall apart completely. She might lose what little control she had left. She might discover that the pain was even worse than she thought, that the isolation was the only thing keeping her from completely disintegrating. The isolation that had started as protection, becoming more and more like imprisonment, would require her to admit how badly she was hurting, how much she was struggling, how close she was to giving up entirely, would require her to be seen in her brokenness, in her weakness, in her inability to handle this on her own. Have you ever convinced yourself that isolation was protection when it was actually imprisonment? Have you ever pushed away the very people who could help you because accepting help felt like admitting defeat? The resentment thrives in isolation. It grows strongest in the darkness, away from the light of other perspectives. There's no one to offer another viewpoint, to suggest that maybe there's more to the situation than you're seeing. Alone with her pain that had grown so large, blocked out everything else, the sun, the stars, any possibility of light or warmth or beauty or hope. Christmas Day came and went, and Sofia spent it alone, barely noticing it was Christmas at all. It would mean potentially talking about the situation, potentially being asked how she was doing, potentially having to pretend she was okay. She looked like a ghost haunting her own house, drifting through rooms without purpose, existing but not living. A quiet whisper that refuses to be silenced. It was a Thursday morning in late January when Sofia finally left her house. The silence had become deafening, not peaceful silence, but the oppressive silence of a tomb. She grabbed a light jacket from the hook by the door, and she walked out before she could change her mind, before the fear could talk her out of it. How alive it made everything seem. She just walked, one foot in front of the other, moving forward for the first time in what felt like forever. The sounds, birds chirping, cars passing, children laughing in the distance, felt almost overwhelming after months of silence. She could almost smell the coffee, almost hear Carmen's laugh. The doors were closed now, but she could imagine the interior, the pews, the stained glass, the altar, like she was acknowledging them, but not dwelling in them, passing through them rather than being trapped by them, almost forgotten. Maybe she just needed somewhere to sit that wasn't her house, but wasn't fully public either. Sunlight filtered through small stained glass windows, casting colored patterns on the worn wooden pews below, reds and blues and golds and greens dancing across the wood. Dust particles floated lazily in the beams of light. And the silence was different here than it had been in her house. Not oppressive, but peaceful, sacred, like a silence held meaning. The wood was smooth beneath her hands, worn by generations of people who'd sat in this same spot. Like the constant noise in her head, the replaying of conversations, the rehearsing of grievances, the imagining of confrontations, had finally paused, just for a moment, just long enough for her to hear herself breathe. Time felt different in this space. But now, with the afternoon light hitting it at just the right angle, the words seemed to glow. Then she read them again, more slowly this time. Them? She saw the pattern. She saw the trap she'd built for herself. Imprisoned? Grief. It wasn't fair that she was the one who had to do the forgiving. She wasn't the one who'd lied. She wasn't the one who'd betrayed. You're the one whose life has stopped while everyone else's keeps moving. Every fiber of her being resisted the implication that she bore any responsibility, that she had any agency, that there was anything she could or should do differently. A constant replaying of the betrayal. What if it wasn't about saying what they did was okay? The gap between where she was now and where those words seemed to be inviting her felt impossibly wide. Maybe she could cross it. Maybe she could be free. Just enough to matter. Instead, she stood on her porch for a moment, looking at the street, the trees, the sky painted in spectacular sunset colors she'd been missing. About what it would take to rebuild it. She opened the windows, letting fresh air flow through rooms that had been sealed for too long. About the weight and how exhausted she was from holding it. One small step at a time. But better. There's a profound difference between living with pain and actually feeling it. You never sit with it and let it wash over you without trying to control it. Had taken the soft, vulnerable core of her hurt and covered it with layers of rage. The anger felt better than the pain. It felt powerful instead of helpless, active instead of passive, strong instead of weak. Had built walls so high that no one could see how badly she was actually hurting. Because feeling pain really, truly feeling it without armor or protection is terrifying. And for the first time in months, she didn't immediately start rehearsing her grievances. She felt it rising from somewhere deep, somewhere she'd been keeping it locked away. For Carmen, who'd been her sister for 65 years. For all those years of shared history that now felt tainted. She pulled the blankets over her head as if trying to contain it, but it was too big, too overwhelming, too real. Had to feel this without trying to stop it. Not just acknowledge it, but actually sit with it, sink into it, let it wash over you. Just let the grief have its way with her. And underneath all the tears, Sofia felt something she hadn't felt in months. And even though it's shaky, there's profound relief. Like maybe she could carry it now. And pretending she wasn't had only made things worse. It was the first real step toward healing. Grief makes space for healing. Esses verdades das mostram que o impossível ser de deserto emocional e encontrar as águas da cura. Desde que a gente esteja disposto a fazer escolhas difíceis, mas libertadoras. Não é mesmo? E ative as notificações para receber um aviso sempre que uma nova mensagem de luz diária for publicada aqui nesse canal. There's a kind of forgiveness that most people forget about entirely. It's not the forgiveness you extend to the person who hurt you. It's not the forgiveness you hope to receive from someone you've wronged. Thinking, processing, the walls she'd built that kept out not just the people who'd hurt her, but everyone who loved her. The way she'd pushed away Michael, the way she'd let her health decline, her house fall into disarray, her life shrink to nothing. Of self-judgment. People who'd reached out, who tried to maintain connection. I should have been more mature, more resilient. Replayed your mistakes, wishing you'd done things differently, beating yourself up for not being perfect. The shame felt almost worse than the betrayal. That's not a flaw in your character, that's just being human. And being human is okay. That she didn't have to be superhuman to be worthy of compassion. I hurt Michael, and slowly something began to shift. You were drowning in pain and couldn't see his love clearly. But simply because you're human, and humans deserve compassion, especially from themselves. I'm sorry for pushing you away these past months. You were trying to help me, trying to be there for me. And I treated you like you were the enemy. I shut you out. I was cold and distant. I made you feel unwelcome when you'd done nothing wrong. I see now how patient you were, how persistent, how loving. And I'm sorry I couldn't see it then. And I'm working on forgiving myself too. Whenever self-judgment arose, you wasted so much time. You should have known better. She'd respond with compassion. Kept choosing compassion over condemnation. Kept forgiving herself for the crime of being human. When you recognize your own humanity with all its mésanges and imperfection, you can recognize theirs too. She sat in the same pew and spoke quietly into the stillness. Because I deserve peace. The understanding that she was human, that being human meant being imperfect, and that being imperfect didn't make her unworthy of love, including her own. She'd stopped punishing herself for being human, starting with the most important stone, self-forgiveness. There's a lie that our culture tells us about forgiveness, a lie so deeply embedded that most people never even question it, that self-respecting individuals don't let others get away with it, where forgive and forget is said with a sneer, completely contrary to everything she'd believed, about the isolation that had felt like protection but had actually been prison, about the bitterness that had felt like strength but had actually been poison, about the constant rehearsing of grievances that had felt like holding them accountable but had actually just been torturing herself. It wasn't about clinging to bitterness like a life raft. It wasn't about refusing to let go. What takes more strength, clinging to bitterness because it's familiar and feels justified, or releasing it even though it's terrifying? Staying stuck in the past because it's safe and known, or choosing to move forward into an uncertain future? Letting someone else's choices control your life indefinitely, or reclaiming your power regardless of what they do? When you really examine what strength means, forgiveness isn't weakness at all. It's one of the most powerful, courageous acts a human being can perform. Ruth was 80 years old, sharp as ever, and had always been the wise one in the family. What's going on? You sound different. All of it. And I can tell you this with absolute certainty. Weak people hold grudges. Strong people let them go. It means taking back your power. How is that strong? Sofia had never thought about it that way. The anger wasn't hurting them. It was hurting her. The resentment wasn't holding them accountable. It was holding her hostage. The kind most people don't have. That takes strength most people don't have. Forgiveness doesn't mean what they did was okay. It means you're choosing to be okay regardless of what they did, or whether she chose to heal, to grow, to reclaim her life and her peace. That was up to her. That was her choice. That was where her strength could be demonstrated. Her husband, Robert, who'd faced terminal cancer with grace, who'd spent his last months making sure his family would be okay. Her mother, who'd raised 5 children during the Depression without losing her kindness. Her friend Maria, who discovered her husband's affair and had somehow found the strength to forgive him, to work on their marriage. They'd been strong because they faced difficulty with courage, with grace, with a refusal to let circumstances define them. Instead of seeing it as something she'd do for Carmen and David, she saw it as something for herself, an act of self-liberation. Instead of, if I forgive them, I'm weak, she thought. If I forgive them, I'm strong enough to free myself. The 65 years of friendship that had been real, that had mattered. It was giving Carmen power over Sofia's emotional state. Was that the legacy she wanted? Or would it be stronger to say, I see what you did. I acknowledge the hurt. I'm choosing to forgive you anyway, not because you've earned it, but because I deserve to be free from resentment. I deserve to have a relationship with my son. I deserve to choose love over bitterness, more in control than she'd been while being controlled by resentment, more free than she'd been while trapped in bitterness. And once again, she found herself at the old chapel. She was the one breaking the very structure she needed to cross. The strength to build the bridge, even if I have to build it alone. The choice that would set her free. For me, the bridge was being built. That's freedom. And Sofia was finally ready to claim it. There's something almost magical about water, isn't there? Something profound and life-giving that goes beyond simple chemistry, beyond H2O molecules, beyond scientific explanations. Your body knows what it needs, knows what will save you. It renews, restoring what's been depleted. It brings dead things back to life in ways that seem miraculous. And the person who was dying begins to recover. And she tried everything to quench her thirst. If anything, those strategies had made her thirstier, had made the desert hotter and more desolate. The sun was setting, painting the sky in spectacular colors, oranges and pinks and purples and golds, all blending together. Instead, she walked around to the back of the building, to a part of the property she'd forgotten existed. The wooden benches had weathered to gray. A mechanism that had once made water flow was surely broken. And she looked around at the neglected garden, seeing her own life reflected back. With the right care, with water and attention, even the most neglected garden can bloom again. Even the most dried-up fountain can flow again. To let it nourish the roots of joy and peace that had been dying. And for the first time, forgiveness didn't feel like a burden. It felt like relief. Like coming home after a long journey. Like drinking cool water after being thirsty for so long. It creates a thirst that nothing else can quench. You try to satisfy it with anger. Doesn't work. You try to quench it with vindication. Doesn't work. Nothing works because you're drinking salt water, drinking poison, drinking anything except the one thing that could actually help. He finds the spring that never runs dry. He drinks from the source that brings dead things back to life. Maybe trust couldn't be rebuilt. It doesn't fight or struggle. It flows. It finds the path of least resistance, moving around obstacles, gradually wearing away barriers. It simply flows, gently wearing away the hard edges of resentment, gradually reshaping the landscape of your heart. Each one turning the valve that would let the healing waters begin to flow. About how deeply it had hurt. Not because what you did was okay, it wasn't, but because I need to. Because I deserve to drink from the healing waters again. Because I deserve to live instead of slowly dying inside. Because I deserve to be free. I'm learning that forgiveness isn't about you. It's about me. It's about choosing to let the healing waters flow again. I know I can't keep living in the desert. The healing waters of forgiveness had begun to flow. She woke up without that immediate heaviness. She found herself humming while making breakfast. She opened all the curtains. She went to the grocery store without anxiety, like bringing something back to life. But yeah, I think we could. Every pipe cleared felt like opening channels for healing. Tears of relief and joy. That it's the only thing that can truly heal. Thank you for showing me that I don't have to stay in the desert. That I can choose to let the healing waters flow. That I can be restored, renewed, brought back to life. Her whole inner landscape became more alive, more full of possibility. Always waiting for you to make the choice. You can never choose thirst over water, death over life, prison over freedom. So here's where we get practical, where theory becomes action, where inspiration transforms into application. If they remain just nice ideas, pretty concepts, inspiring stories that you nod along with but never actually use. A parent who disappointed you, a friend who abandoned you, a business partner who cheated you. 3 practical, doable, concrete steps that will start the water flowing. 3 actions you can take that will begin the process of transformation. A willingness to take the first step, even if you can't see the whole staircase. Most people, when they've been hurt deeply, spend enormous amounts of time and energy retelling the story. They replay it in their minds like a movie they can't stop watching. They share it with anyone who'll listen. They go over every detail, every word said, every action taken, keeping the wound fresh and raw. There's a part of us that needs to tell the story, that needs validation that yes, what happened was wrong. Yes, your pain is real and justified. If you keep touching it, picking at the scab, reopening it day after day, it's never going to heal. It's going to get infected. But if you acknowledge it, clean it properly, bandage it, and then leave it alone, it will heal. or open a note on your phone. And complete this sentence in the simplest, most direct way possible. I was hurt by when they. No lengthy explanations. Don't dive into all the details. Don't relive it again. But I'm not going to organize my whole life around it anymore. It's something you do. It's something you embody through concrete actions. Let me give you examples. Delete a draft email where you've been rehearsing what you'd say to them. Throw away an object that reminds you of the betrayal. Choose not to bring up the hurt in a conversation where you normally would. Pray for the person who hurt you, even if it's just, God, I don't know how, but I'm trying. Write their name on paper and burn it as a symbolic act of release. Take down a mental scorecard where you've been keeping track of their wrongs. Think one positive thought about the person, even from years ago. Unfollow them on social media so you're not constantly triggered. Ask a friend to help you stop talking about it every time you meet. Notice what all of these have in common. They're small, they're doable, they're not overwhelming. One tiny action that moves you in the direction of freedom. Sometimes I open it and just look at it, feeling angry. But because you deserve to be free from carrying it. Like I'd put down a backpack I'd been carrying for years and didn't even realize how heavy it was. Maybe it's something else specific to your situation. Whatever it is, choose one thing and do it today. Choose one small act of release and watch what happens. But one small step at a time, one choice at a time, one action at a time. They're the first thing we think about when we wake up and the last thing before we sleep. What if, instead of focusing on what they did, you focused on who you're becoming? What if, instead of obsessing over their choices, you focused on your own? Let me give you a practical framework. Every time you catch yourself thinking about the person who hurt you, ask yourself these 3 questions. Question 1. What can I learn from this experience? Not, what did they do wrong? You already know that. But what can I learn? About yourself, about relationships, about boundaries, about resilience, about what you need, about who you want to become. Always some way that pain can become a teacher instead of just a tormentor. Maybe you can become wiser about setting boundaries. Maybe you can become someone who helps others going through similar pain. If you just try to stop thinking about the person who hurt you without giving your mind something else to focus on, you'll fail. You're saying, I matter. My healing matters. My happiness matters. And I'm going to invest in it. And they welcomed her back with open arms, with no judgment, with only love and support. Something just for her, just for joy. She'd stopped giving them power and started reclaiming it for herself. Today, they won't magically make all the pain go away. They won't erase the betrayal or fix broken relationships. It becomes a stream, then a river, then a flood of healing that washes away the desert and brings your heart back to life. The power to forgive. The power to be free. Redirect your focus. Choose freedom. Choose life. Now I ask you, did you like the 3 practical steps of this daily message of light? If so, like this video to increase its reach, so you help bless more people with this daily message of light. Now, as we come to the end of Sofia's journey, as we've watched her move from the desert to the garden, from death to life, from prison to freedom, there's one more truth I need to share with you. A source that never runs dry. Someone who embodied forgiveness in its purest, most powerful form. Judas, who'd walked with him for 3 years, who'd shared meals with him, who'd seen his miracles and heard his teachings, sold him out for 30 pieces of silver. The rock, the leader, the one who declared his loyalty, most loudly denied, even knowing Jesus 3 times before the rooster crowed. Did he spend his final moments rehearsing his grievances and imagining confrontations? No, That's the strongest thing anyone has ever done in human history. The kind of strength that can look at betrayal and choose love anyway. He gave us the power to walk it, opening her eyes, turning the valve that would let the healing waters flow, reminding her that she's loved, not because she's perfect, but because she's His. The healing waters flow most powerfully when they flow from the source, from Jesus, who is living water, who offers to quench every thirst, who promises that anyone who drinks from Him will never thirst again. One who forgave the unforgivable, show you how to forgive what feels impossible. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to know exactly how it's going to work. Tell Him about the person you can't forgive. Tell Him that you don't know how to do this on your own. Ask Him to show you the way. Ask Him to be the source of your healing waters. Take one small step toward forgiveness, knowing Jesus is with you. Remember those 3 practical steps we talked about? Choose one. Name the wound. Choose one act of release. Redirect your focus. But this time, do it knowing you're not alone. Do it knowing that the one who forgave you is giving you the power to forgive others. Thank Him for one thing: the sunshine, a kind word from someone, the fact that you're still here and still fighting, the hope that healing is possible. Let the healing waters of Jesus' love and grace and forgiveness begin to flow in your life. In this journey, Jesus walks with you. He's the source. He's the water. He's the bridge. He's the healer. If today's reflection helped you understand that forgiveness is strength, not weakness, and that the waters of healing are within you, I'm sure you'll enjoy this other video I've specially selected for you here on the screen. Click now to continue your journey of transformation. Now you have everything you need. Source of healing waters that never run dry. I know forgiveness feels impossible when the hurt is fresh and raw. I know releasing resentment feels like betraying yourself when you've been wronged so deeply. They're inside you right now, ready to flow, ready to restore, ready to renew. Maybe it's talking to Jesus about the person you can't forgive. The water will start flowing. The garden will begin to bloom. Take the step, turn the valve,